In Chapter 6, we're going to talk about bonds. I want to describe exactly what bonds are, why they're important, and how to value them. Remember the corporation. Don't think of a corporation as Caspian Sea Drinks that produces a drink. Think of a corporation as a money machine, and I don't care what they produce. To me, they produce money. Equity holders, which are the owners, put in money or invest money. Bond holders loan money. They invest money in the corporation. So the corporation takes money from these two groups of people and they use it to produce cash flows, to produce more money. That money is first used to pay the bondholder what they're promised. They have a specific promise, a payout rule that describes the size and timing of the cash flows. Whatever money is left over is paid to the equity holder. The equity holder can pay it out as dividends, or they can decide to retain it, put it back in the corporation as retained earnings, and use it to produce more stuff. Okay, now let's go through an example of how a corporation may actually want to use a bond. Let's say that we have a project. We need to expand our plant. It's going to cost $20 million to expand the plant, and we want to do it through a bond financing. So exactly what is a bond? Imagine a bond is a physical piece of paper. It's going to look something like this. It's going to say the company's name, maybe Caspian Sea Drinks, and it's going to have a par value. That par value, let's say, is $1,000. That's a typical par value. This is called the face value, or maturity value, or the par value. It's going to say this bond matures at some point. Let's say today is October 1st, 2013. It's going to say this bond matures on, pick a date, October 1st, 2016. And it's going to say that it pays a coupon, and the coupon rate is, pick a number, 9%. And it says that it pays semi-annually. So they're going to be coupons. The bond matures in 3 years, and it's going to pay semi-annually, so there are a total of 6 coupons. And once again, imagine this is a physical piece of paper, a coupon just like what you would have in a newspaper that you would cut out to bring to any store to get your discount. So there's payment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and each one of these would have a date on them. This would be April 2014, October 2014, April 15, October 15, April 16, and October 16. It would say if it was on the 1st of the month, or 15th, or 30th, or whatever. Well, how do you come up with this payment? Well, the par value is $1,000. The coupon rate is 9%. 9% of what? 9% of par, but it pays semi-annually, so divide by 2. So the payments are going to be $45. Okay, so we have payments here, 45, 45, 45 each time. The reason I do this, I want to show you that this is a payout rule. This is something that will not be changed for the corporation. We're thinking about the simplest form of bonds, and those are fixed coupon bonds. So if I draw a timeline, I go back to Chapter 3 and I think about how to value something. The value of any financial asset is a present value of its future cash flows. Well, the cash flows generated here are the 6 payments, 3, 4, 5, 6, of $45 each. And at the end, you get $1,000. Your calculator was designed specifically for this problem, to get the present value of these cash flows. So you will pay to Caspian Sea Drinks today the present value of those future cash flows. So we have what I want to call the payout rule. The payout rule is established by Caspian Sea Drinks, or whoever the issuer is. And it says, look, we're going to make 6 payments. Those payments are going to be $45 because I know the coupon rate, I know the par value, I know it pays semi-annually. Almost all bonds pay semi-annually, but if it said it paid annually, this would be, instead of dividing by 2, it would be divided by 1, it would be $90. If it paid quarterly, which is extremely rare, it would be divided by 4, and it would be $22.50. So that's how we determine the payment, and it says the par value is $1,000. So this is set by the issuer. The next thing we need to do to find present value is what? We need to have an interest rate. So think about where that interest rate might come from. The interest rate is going to be determined by you, the investor. And let's just say that we determine the yield that we need to get is 9.2%. And 9.2% per year, so divide that by 2, it'll be 4.6. And I'll talk just a second about where that comes from, but I want you to realize that this is the size and timing of the cash flows. And then this is determined by you, the investor, and this takes into account the risk of the cash flows. And when I do that, I get a price of $994.86. So I'm willing to pay $994.86 for each bond. So here's what Caspian Sea Drinks needs to do. They tell people, or they know they want to raise $20 million. Then they're going to sell bonds, and the bonds cost $994.86 each. That means they have to sell a total of 20,103.36 bonds. Now in reality they're not going to sell a fraction of a bond, but for purposes of the classroom, we'll just make sure you're doing the math like that, unless you're asked to round it to the nearest whole number or something like that. But that's where it comes from. Okay, so the next question is, why do I have this 4.6%? Where does that come from? It comes from the following. Think about if you're going to loan money. Well, think about if you're going to a car lot, right? You go to the car lot, they run your credit score, and they say you have a certain credit score, therefore they will give you a certain rate on the car. The worse your credit score, the higher the interest you're going to have to pay for the car. Companies have something similar. There are 3 rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody, and Fitch, and they rate bonds, and they all have a slightly different way to do it, but essentially they rate them AAA, AA, single A, or triple B. Think about this as A+, A, A-, and B+. These 4 grades are considered to be investment grade. And then they have double B, single B, C, and D. These 3 are considered to be speculative grade, often called junk. Speculative grade. And this is one that's already in default. So essentially what you would do, I didn't even spell default right, but that's fine in default. What you would do as an investor is you would look at this corporation, you would see that they have a AA rating, and firms that have a AA rating typically have a yield to maturity on the bonds of 9.2%, right? So then you would say, I need to have a yield of 9.2% annually divided by 2 because we have semi-annual payments. Now you don't want to rely solely on the rating agencies. You want to do your own homework and think about, if a friend asks you to borrow money, what's the first question you're going to ask them? You're going to say, well, when are you going to pay me back, right? And I guess maybe if you charge your friend interest, how much are you going to pay you? How much are you going to pay me back? So your friend's going to give you a payout rule. It's going to say exactly how much he's going to pay you back and when. That's a payout rule that's determined by your friend, that's determined by the corporation. The second question you're going to ask your friend is, why do you need it? Right? If he says, I need it, to buy some food, or I need it to pay rent, or I need it to make my car payment, or something important, you're more likely to loan to your friend than if your friend says, I need it to go out drinking tonight, right? So same thing if it's a corporation. You say to the corporation, why do you need this? And they say, we have this really cool project. We're going to build this new factory. We're going to expand the factory. You think that's really good. So if you like the project, you're more likely to loan the money and charge a lower interest rate. If you think what they're going to do with the money is really dumb, you're less likely to loan them the money. And if you do, it's going to be at a higher interest rate. So that's where the rates come from. So we need the payout rule by the corporation, and we need to know the time to maturity, the yield to maturity, which is the discount rate, and that's what we determine. This is the risk of the cash flows. Okay, just a couple more details. I'm going to pause it and clear the screen off real quick. Okay, there are usually three types of issuers. They're corporations. They issue corporate bonds, and municipalities like the state of Georgia, state of California, state of New York, cities like New York, Chicago, Atlanta will issue municipal bonds. And then the U.S. Treasury will issue treasury bonds. These things work pretty much the same way. They almost always pay semi-annually. And there's very little difference mechanically in how they work. There's one thing that kind of stands out. Municipal bonds are a little bit different than the rest. These are usually, and I have the keyword, these are usually tax-free. And by tax-free, I mean usually there's no income tax. So I should say usually they're income tax-free. So that's going to be a difference in what I'm willing to pay for a corporate bond versus a municipal bond. Let's say we have the corporate bond over here and a muni bond over here. So people just call it muni rather than municipal. It's $1,000 par for both of them. And it's a 10% coupon rate. And let's just say paying annually to make it a little bit easier to think about. So they both have the same payout rule. They both have, pick a number, 5 years to maturity. So it's a 10% coupon rate. That means your coupon payment is $100 for both the corporation and the municipality. If it's a corporate bond, you're paying income taxes. Let's say your tax rate is 40%. So you get that $100, you have to pay $40 in taxes, so you only take home $60. If it's a municipal bond, and if bond counsel says so, and only if it meets certain requirements, so you rely on bond counsel to tell you this, then there are no federal or state income taxes, so you pay zero in tax. So you take home $100. If the bonds have the exact same payout rule, the exact same risk, which one would you prefer? You would prefer the muni bond because after taxes you make a lot more money. So the return you get on a municipal bond is not equal to the return that you get on a taxable or corporate bond. I'll have T here for taxable. It's going to equal to the return on the taxable bond times 1 minus your tax rate. So those are your primary differences. There are a few other details in Chapter 6, but I think this will get you going down the road and thinking about things and realizing what a bond is.